Svelte. So the idea here is that I want to kind of like, you know, just get people into Svelte and see how they can get started and show that as well. So if you've joined late, who am I? So my name's Ilesh Mistry. I'm a CMS specialist and a content MVP. You can kind of contact me using the QR code on the right. So the bits I'm going to be covering is a sort of like quick introduction about Svelte, how to get started, show you some of their examples which are really cool and easy to kind of get going with. And I'll show you a quick demo of sourcing data from a Headless CMS, which I think is sometimes an opportunity to bring data into an application. Then we'll look at some Svelte takeaways as well from that. So what is Svelte? So it's basically a JavaScript enhanced sort of like application development framework. It's similar to this component frameworks that you would normally use like React and Vue. One of the key things I find as well is like with Svelte is that you generally end up writing less code compared to the other frameworks. And I'm just going to flick over to an example of this. So the example component at the top shows you two text boxes, and what you're doing is a simple sort of like addition of that. So as soon as you type in some numbers in there, it will add those items up and show you the results. So we've got three sort of images, and hopefully they're coming okay on the screen share. But on the left-hand side, or basically you start off with React, and that's probably one of the popular frameworks out there. And you can see the number of lines of codes you probably would need to use. And if you go further across, you've got Vue.js, and that's a little bit sort of less as well. But as soon as you move over to Svelte, you see like that is like reducing the amount of code like massively. And you know, there is a blog post at the bottom of the slide there that talks more about this. But you can see that like if you're trying to pick up Svelte or like learn, it seems like a very easier option to kind of pick this up quite quickly and then start rolling with it. To go more on with Svelte, so it's basically a tool for building fast web applications. One of the key things is the fact that build time is what it really tries to kind of incorporate. So rather than actually building your application on, say, runtime, you tend to do it on build time, so it's before the application starts, and it then prides itself with a no virtual DOM as well with it. The state management, there's not like it's not complex, and it's mainly based on being like truly reactive. And it's written by Rich Harris at the start, and then it's like massively open source, like it's open for like lots of contributors, and some of these guys are already going to be talking about this later as well. And it also powers an application framework called Sapper. So more information about this, because we've got two talks already on this later, so I'm sure the guys will kind of talk a little bit about that as well. So I guess I could talk about like how I got started with this. So Svelte is something that was quite new to me. It was mentioned by one of my colleagues, and I decided to have a look. So the key thing for me, or the key starting point for me, was to look on their website, and there's a great tutorial on there and easy to follow steps and to get started with that. And then the other thing, which I'll show you in a bit as well, is that the website itself has examples area. And for me, like if I go to other websites, I don't tend to see this really. It's more like a code pen style format, so you can actually see examples with their results, and also tweak those you know, examples to try things out. Another thing I've started to do as well is to go to the Discord chat room to ask questions as well, because they've got a great community out there, and I would heavily recommend to do that. If you're looking to kind of like listen to further talks, there's the Svelte Summit on October 18th. So that's something to look out for. And I just feel like if you want to get started, it's worth like getting involved in meetups and events like this. It would really help. So for the Svelte example, so I'm just going to flick off the slide deck 1 second. And then the examples themselves, what we've got is like there's a lot of things that they show. And you can see here a simple example of just the hello world on there, but you can see how the word itself can be sort of like added into the prop here and then added into there, and you can see and change things as well as you like. They've got elements here that show you how to kind of change images, and good old Rick Astley's there. And then we've got other ones as well. So for example, if I look at, say, nested components, you can see that then you can start bringing in other files of information. So what you can notice here is that the initial sort of file is, sort of extended with Svelte. But what you can see here is that I could go to the nested file here, Meetup. And you can see it's already coming up on the screen on the right-hand side, but the idea is it will bring it across on this side. And Svelte also does things where the styling is kind of in-house as well. So in that page or in that sort of area that you're creating items on, so it keeps it very sort of like component-based as well. The other things that you could probably look at is, as you go along with these examples, there's a lot here that you can see that can help later on when you start like building complex functionality. But you get reactive elements in here. There's things about props, so you can kind of start changing things. And then there's also things where you can start like going into the if else containers and things. And then also, let's see if I can find the other one I was going to show. You've got things where you've got binding, so you can kind of like incorporate some elements in there. And also you've got things where you can do like, normal things that you would normally expect on a form, but be able to kind of do it quite quickly and see those things on there. I think as well, there's also the each block and then the model. So let's go and find some of those. But the idea is that you get a lot of things here that you can start like thinking about. So I've been on many projects when the clients actually said, hey, like, or even the requirement is, can you have something that can allow you to just add something and remove some, add another field, add another item, And this is quite cool. Like, just like the functionality that you can say, okay, well, you can clear things out. But these are like sort of like, we can understand that these are like more simpler examples that can be then extended to complex scenarios. And then I guess I can show you just one final one from here, which is quite a funny one. Let's see if I can find it. Here we go. So everybody loves cats, right? So here we go. Hello and goodbye. But basically, like you can see that you can do a lot of stuff here, and this is more to do with actually the body manipulation side of things. But you can see what it's capable of as well. Okay, so I'm going to flick back to the slides. Okay. So my next thing really to show is like we can see that there's lots of examples out there on how to bring in content or utilize content or utilize data. Basically, the data is kind of the key thing here. So I'm going to use or show you an example of actually sourcing from a Headless CMS, and this one's called Kentico Kontent. What we've got there is a few sort of like get started pointers. So obviously we clone the repository from the sample template, do npm install, and then you'll have to register with Kentico Kontent. So that's just a separate step you need to do. And it's very easy to do that. And then once you've created the project, you kind of have to enable the API configuration. And once that's done, then you start putting in sort of like the sample content in there. And then you can run the application. So if I flick back over to there, so let's go to source. And I'll bring up also content, so just reload that. So this is Kentico Kontent, and within here, you'll see lots of things here, but it's basically just a headless CMS, and it's got items in there. Now, if I wanted to sort of like utilize and change something on my code base, let's see if we can run this. So I'm just going to run the app. So in this case, we need to do npm run build. And then I'm just going to run the actual Sapper application. Once I've done that, I'm just going to reload my page. And this is basically just a very simple site that's been created. But in particular, what we've done is we've, on the offer section, we've brought in the headless CMS data from the CMS Kentico Kontent and populated these items in here. So just to quickly show you this, so for example, a starter for avocado and mango salsa. If I go into here, you can see that that's probably, that's the actual one that it is. And you can see the information here. That so the idea here is now, like, if I was something like giving this to a client or something, I could probably get them to say, okay, let's ask you to start making changes. So we can go ahead and amend the price. Let's go for 13, 14 pounds. And let's say we've got peppers in here as well. I'm just going to publish this and flick back to my app, and I'll probably just need to restart it. So get that back running and reload the page, and may need to do another reload, sorry. But you can see here that that's now amended to $14 with the information there. So what I'm really trying to show you here is that you can still create a small application that can be fed in from a headless CMS, and it allows that sort of content items of it can be driven elsewhere, and it doesn't have to be sort of like, and if you imagine like what is actually returned in the end from this headless CMS, it's basically a JSON file. So if you imagine consuming that, so if we go back to the code, I can show you that quickly, is that's where we're sort of getting the actual JSON file. Once we've got that, then we end up adding some styling to the page itself. And then it's a simple sort of like each statement to kind of go through the categories and the items and display them in the actual format that we want it to be displayed. So hopefully you can see that you know, it's very simple to kind of get used to using Svelte. It's one of the ways that you can kind of incorporate a headless CMS into it, but in the end it's data. So whether that's a headless CMS or something else like a JSON file that can just be coming in from somewhere else as well. Okay, just going to flick back to the presentation. Okay, so that was kind of the main bit I wanted to kind of show. And here are some Svelte takeaways. So for me, one of the biggest things I'm hoping that if you do take away anything from this is, you know, you end up writing less code. And imagine that can save like performance on sort of like when you're building the code before and before runtime. It will hopefully make the application load faster as well on first load. I feel that the community is, you know, driving this a lot as well, so it's really good. I showed earlier how easy it is to kind of build your own sort of small Sapper app, and it's easy to learn. And I feel that if anything, you know, if you've got any questions, then please, you know, join the Discord chat room as well. And then I guess like a final point is to show that obviously, you know, you can use data from anything, and I just showed you an example of how to bring this across from a headless CMS. Okay, so that's it from me. If you've got any questions, just pop them on the group chat. And I've got a little sort of thing on the right just to make sure that if anybody wants to register with Kentico Kontent, there's a 90 days free trial as well, and they can use that link to there. So I'll just wait for like a minute or so to see if there's any questions coming in, or you can unmute yourselves as well.
I had a quick question. Sorry.
Okay, sure, yeah.
I don't know whether you'll know the answer to it, but obviously, as someone that's quite interested in JavaScript frameworks, and I like trying to apply them on big accounts where I can with clients.
Mm-hmm.
Something that's quite important is, I mean, you mentioned an active community. Is there like a big companies that back this? Like obviously React have Facebook,
Mm-hmm.
Angular, dare I say it, has Google. Does Svelte have anything?
So the sort of like clearest answer I could probably give is if I flick over to their website and go to their homepage. They've got a number of clients at the bottom of this. So who's using them? So here's, I guess, your answer. There's a couple of, like biggish clients there, but yeah, this is probably where you would probably need to find out where, if there's a client that suits the requirements, like Philips is, massive as well. So there's quite a lot of companies in there.
Cool.
I can help out with that question. I think, yeah, you see in the list GoDaddy. I think they also have like Apple that is looking for Svelte developers already. And yeah, there's a couple of other ones that are just not listed here yet because I don't think this was updated in quite a while.
Thanks.
Cool. Thanks, Marcus.
Okay. Any other questions before we move to the next presentation? Okay. So I guess